Well, welcome back to Gardener's Cottage, and in this video we're going to show you and demonstrate how to split snowdrops. You're looking really after 3, 4 or 5 years for clumps like this that have really grown out and are thick, and quite often you will find that they've got lovely abundant flowers around the rims, but the centre of the clump starts to look just green leaf and not so much flower. But anything that has probably several hundred bulbs like this is suitable for splitting, and now's a great time of year to actually do it while they're still in flower. Traditionally the advice has always been let them flower in situ, and you can do that and then split them as soon as the flowers have finished and the seed heads are starting to form. But you can do it at any time during the snowdrops being in growth, and by doing it now when you've actually got the flowers, you can move them into positions and get an instant effect. It's like going and buying pots of snowdrops for yourself, but at zero cost. So if you've got clumps like this and you're wanting to have more snowdrops the following year, now's a great time to get in there and do it, isn't it, puppy? Right, so let's show you how to split these two puppies off the clump of snowdrops in the initial phase. Come on girls, out of the way. And then we're just going to get a good sized spade, nothing too big or deep, and then we're going to get in the side of these snowdrops and start to elevate them out of the soil. So here we go, putting my spade not too close to the clump because I don't want to cut through any of the bulbs. Go right down, and quite often I've hit a tree root, as you will feel. Snowdrops love to grow in woodland, and these are growing under a pear tree. So I'm just going to come round and work my spade and start to lift the whole clump. There we go, starting to ease up, and there they come. You can see they're not too deep. You need probably only around 4 inches of soil to get the clump up, and then you can start to work any excess soil off them and start to tear apart
proper clump
the
back.
actual clump. Now there's a small clump. I'm saying small, there's probably
Split that
20 or 30 bulbs in there.
And I'd pop that back in the hole where we took the other one out of.
So they will be replanted into
Come on, you two.
this hole. Come on girls, out of the way.
Let's get a bucket. There's a bucket. We can pop the clump in there. It's quite difficult because puppies want to help.
And the clump can go in the bucket to be moved to where we're going to plant those out. But you can already see I've replanted maybe 50 bulbs in 2 smaller clumps in the area where the original clump came out. You can see these had very little flower on them because the clumps have been very congested. By splitting these, you allow nutrients to get to the bulbs, light to get to the leaves, and next year these should be back in full flower again.
Just a little aside, make sure you plant them at a similar depth to what they were growing previously. Be careful not to plant them too deep. Snowdrops tend to be quite close to the surface, so you don't have to put them very deep.
Okay, so here's our clump of snowdrop bulbs. You can see they're quite superficial, maybe only about 1 inch to 2 inches under the surface. And rather than splitting these with a spade, if your soil's nice and friable, you should just be able to tear them apart. And you're looking ideally for a clump of between 10 and 20 bulbs.
Although I probably do smaller than that, to be fair. I'd probably do 5 to 10.
You can plant these individually. But when you've got such a profusion of bulbs like this, out of this one clump, I think we're probably going to get 1.
It depends how quickly
2.
you want the display. If you want a quick display next year, plant them in bigger clumps. But in the long run, if you want lots and lots of clumps, plant them in smaller clumps. I would say between 5 and 10. Or 10 to 20. Mike always puts more in than I do.
I like them to grow away quicker. You can see in here we've got all different size bulbs. Large mature bulbs, small ones which will probably come off the larger bulbs either by division or seed, and some really tiny little bulbs which are probably only a year old. And snowdrops will seed really reliably as well.
Stop digging.
So let's see how many clumps we're going to get out of here.
We're going to pop these in this new border.
You see just how congested they are. Yeah, if you want, you can just take a
I'd
small
say
clump
that's
like
about,
that.
to be fair, that's about right. If you buy some in the garden centre, that's what
You're
you'll
probably
get.
only going to get 5 or 10 bulbs each one, aren't you?
And they're quite expensive to buy in the garden centre. So if you have got clumps in your garden that have been in a few years and are looking congested, it's definitely worth splitting them.
So not too deep. And by splitting these further, you can get a really broad carpet effect. I am going to be a bit more
That's a little one.
to try and get a really nice...
Well, if you think about it, you don't want to overcrowd them when you plant them out, do you? The idea is they'll get growing much quicker if they're not in too big a clumps. I think if you have to be prepared to be patient, but next year I've got ones that I planted last year that are doing really well this year. I do this every year. I've done it every year for golly.
If they're coming out of the clump
My
at
entire
a
gardening
whole
life.
range of different depths, try and get them more or less at the same depth for planting. You can see the white of the stem.
That's quite difficult with Molly there.
Gives you an idea of which bit has to be underground.
Sophie, come on.
Got a terrible feeling we're going to turn our backs and these two are going to dig these up completely.
The problem we've got at the moment is our dogs like digging. The
Fascinated with everything.
They're fascinated with everything to do with the garden.
Okay, I think these are going to give us a really nice whole new area of snowdrops in this garden. You see, some of them have got flowers on, some of them haven't. That doesn't matter, these are all good sized little bulbs, and a good percentage of these will now grow away in this lovely cool moist soil, and these should all flower next year. If you've got any weed that comes up or grass where they've been growing through grass and you're popping them into a herbaceous border like this, take the opportunity while you're splitting the clump to remove any of that weed and grass that's coming with them. There we go.
Golly, how many have we got so far?
And if they look good once you've planted them, you've usually planted them well. If they're falling all over the place and collapsing, you've probably not put them deep enough. And they shouldn't need watering in or anything at this time of year. The soil's wet, cool and ideal.
If they look droughted at all, you could give them a water if you haven't had any rain. But we generally don't, we just leave them and they're always fine. But it has rained quite heavily this week, so the soil is lovely and wet. It's a good time to split. The other advantage to splitting them now is you can see what variety of snowdrop it is. If you leave them till they finish flowering, it's often difficult to remember which variety is which. So this way I'm concentrating on a particular variety of snowdrop that I'm splitting.
They do vary quite considerably. There's hundreds of different varieties of snowdrops. Some large flowered, some very small flowered, some with green striation. I even think the number of petals varies on some of them.
This is quite a
Some of them more
simple
fancy.
one.
I think this is just a wild native English.
It's very easy to grow, this one. They're all easy to grow, to be fair. I've got a giant one at home. I'm trying to keep that on its own, separate from the native one.
These are just going on and on and on, and this is just one clump.
Come on, Sophie, out the way.
And if you can find the right conditions for them to grow on, they'll spread out. Each one of these I'm planting into sometimes a confluent mass or carpet of snowdrops. That's a lovely little clump, isn't it? All different sized bulbs.
You can see the dog's fascinated. Golly. Just hope she's not going to come and dig them all out. She's stood on a hyacinth at the moment. You have to be careful with dogs because if they dig up and eat bulbs, bulbs are can be toxic to dogs. So I'm gonna have to keep an eye on her. Make sure she doesn't dig them up.
Distract her with something better.
And give her something better to chew on.
I can tell I'm getting a bit tired now.
Yeah, that's actually why you do big clumps, isn't it, dear?
Yeah, I know, it's nice.
I do little clumps because I want lots of them.
And you get a marvellous big display of white flowers next year. Whereas your little clumps tend to take a couple of years to
Is
get
that it? Are we done?
into a spectacular
How many
display.
did we get then out of that one clump?
Oh,
Because you put 2 back.
this one.
Oh, you put 2 back in the original hole.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22.
22 little
22
clumps
new
of snowdrops. New plants, new
Covering
clumps.
a really nice little corner of the garden. And they should grow away now. And I look forward to showing you this display next year at this time in spring. Thanks for watching.